Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing well. How are
Good.
you?
I am fantastic.
Just rolling in, getting in off the road.
Uh-oh. Yeah. So you must you have a little distance to drive to work, Devin? Uh-oh. What
Hear
happened?
me?
Oh, I hear you now.
Oh, okay. I was saying that I go back home and I we have puppies.
Oh.
So that's been also something I've been doing for the past month and a
Ah,
week. They just
ah,
turned 5 weeks today.
puppies.
Yep, five
Man,
of them.
haven't done that in a long time.
You want to buy one?
I don't want any more animals.
Any more animals? He said, no, thank you.
No, thank you. I used to love having them, but I got now where uh, I have so much other stuff to do and to keep up with that I bypass the extra stuff, man. And I'm really leaning toward wanting. This is my real desire. I'm trying to even weed out working now because it interferes with my real passion.
Hmm.
And I'm praying for an avenue to just do this full time, do nothing but
So
you
retire from your day job, huh?
just retire and do nothing but uh uh sit. I want to spend at least 6 hours a day just
Uh-huh.
recording content to put up and put on the air and post, and that's all I want to do. Oh, look at that.
The one at the bottom, that's the only boy. That's the one we're keeping.
Oh,
Yeah,
say,
that's Levi.
uh, oh, they're two colors, huh?
Yeah, because the mom is yellow, the dad's black.
Ah, y'all getting rid of all the black girls?
Pastor Dacus, we've always had black dogs.
Ah, yeah.
Their grandparents were black.
He looks like he's a boy.
Oh man. I don't know if you can tell from that picture, but he the biggest thing in there.
Is
Yeah,
he?
he's fluffy and he just eats and that's all
Oh,
he was doing. You look up, he was eating. Everybody else be asleep, he's eating.
wow. That is too much.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So that's what I've been doing.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Part of what I've been doing. It's a
Uh,
lot of work.
yeah, yeah. I want to just be able to do content and post it and uh want to build an audience to start having some real live interaction, with people online. There's so much that, we can address and that is needed in the community,
Mhm.
especially the church community. And it's like, you get some people, all they do is concentrate on just one thing or one aspect, and it's all about what they can do for their own benefit, but not really trying to help people. Uh,
Yeah.
I think there's well, not think, I know there's a need for people to hear. Uh, One of the greatest moments that we had coming up in church was testimony service.
We were just talking about that.
Yeah.
Me and
And,
your friend.
oh, okay. And the reason there are more people who were reached and made the decision to come to Jesus and to give it over to God because of the testimony they heard from someone else who had been through. And in that moment, they realized, oh, if he could do it for them, he can do it for me. If he can fix their issue, he can fix mine.
Isn't there a scripture for that?
You overcome by the word of your testimony and the blood of the Lamb.
Yep.
And the other thing is we don't have enough teaching about truth and true overcoming, and people have, in other words, we don't have enough people giving meat. They everything is milk or easy digestion, nothing to really nourish you. And one of the things that was also effective in the testimony, and you didn't have to say it, but it was manifest in the effect of the testimony, was this: when people could identify that God could save this person who had done all of that, mine ain't so bad. But what we do is, we moved into this culture and now where they started to shame people for their sinful life or their past, and shame them for their all the things they had been through and had suffered and experienced. And they started shaming people rather than letting people know that the God we serve is a God who, in spite of all that you've been through, he still wants to use you. And if you would do a list in the Bible of a list of the worst sinners, you would find them on the list of the greatest saints as well.
Yeah, think about Manasseh. He was one of the worst kings of Israel, and he got it right at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had done what he done, all the damage, but he got it right at the end.
He got it right. And think about it, you think about all the stuff. Moses, David, both murderers. David was an adulterer. Paul was a murderer and a persecutor of the church. You go down through the list of all. Peter denied Jesus 3 times within 24 hours of being told he was, he was going to do it. But all of those people, if he says that he is faithful and just to forgive you of all unrighteousness, then why do we make people feel so bad when we catch them in something only because we're not doing something right now?
Just because it ain't you this time.
Exactly. So we deflect away from ourselves and tell them, you wrong, you going to hell, and that's just unforgivable. There's only one act that he says is unforgivable.
It's lying against the Holy Spirit.
That's all. That's it. I mean, don't tell me, okay, so what? She's doing OnlyFans. And so I have a young lady that my nephew saw her, and he prophesied to her. She ended up coming to his church and being a member. Now, this young lady was raped at 8. She was raped at 12. She was raped at 14. She, and this is her testimony. She's traveled the country telling this testimony. A choir member. She got rescued by her grandparents, and they start taking her to church. She's 14. And she loved to sing in the choir, so she starts singing in the choir. And one of the choir members talked her into becoming a stripper.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, choir member. She's only 14.
Oh, my goodness.
She moves out of her grandparents' house moves in with this choir member, so-called choir member, and she ends up stripping, prostituting, uh, being a porn star, all of that. She
Um,
she said, and the way she felt and believed, that she was worthless now. She always wanted to be a mother. She got pregnant at 14, uh, went through a very, very horrific pregnancy. And baby was born, and then the baby died in her arms.
oh,
Yeah, so she had a very tragic life. My nephew prophesied to her that she was going to have a great life. She was going to have a husband. She was going to have a child. Now, this is all after all that she's been through. And the way she got out of it, she was kidnapped and taken to New York. So she flew to New York because people used to fly her all over the place, you know. She was flown to New York, and the guy locked her in a dungeon in a basement in a house in New York, and he repeatedly abused her, and he told her, because he was also into witchcraft and all that stuff, and he used to do these rituals, he said, and then would violate her, and then he told her, you're not leaving here alive. I'm going to eventually kill you when I'm done with you. And she said all she could think of was the Jesus her grandmother had told her about. And
mm-hmm.
she said she just started praying. And a few days went by. She's praying every day. She said, you'd thought she was one of the wailing women because she was praying every time he would leave. She'd just go to praying. One of his friends came by the house, came in the basement, found her, released her, and got her a ticket back to California. She had told God, if you get me out of this, I'll never do this again. Well, this has been, let's see, at least 15, 16 years now.
Wow.
Could be a little longer than that. But anyway, she meets my nephew. He prophesied to her that her life was about to change. She was going to be a wife. She was going to be a mother. These are the things she thought she would never do. And she was told she couldn't have children.
Uh-huh.
And she just thought, because the first son she had died when she gave birth to the child, and shortly after he dies in her arms, and and they told her, doctors told her that she would never get pregnant again, and blah blah blah, because of all the stuff she had been through. Well, one of the guys who went to his church worked at the post office. He was older than her, but he took a liking to her. And he started talking to her, and my nephew, told him how to deal with her and treat her, because one of the problems she had, because she operated in the Los Angeles area in Southern California, a lot of her clients, and she tells this story in her testimony, a lot of her clients were pastors and deacons of these churches.
Mm.
Yeah. And so she says she was really trying to live right, turn her life around. She says, but they would do stuff and try to entice her and try to make passes at her. And she's trying to get right with the Lord. She told one story, she's on the altar really praying, and this guy comes up and pats her on the back and then kisses her on her lips while she's praying.
Oh,
Yeah.
there would have been a brawl.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And so then she tells the story about she doesn't take appointments now to preach unless she takes a few people with her.
Uh-huh.
She goes. She said, because she had this one pastor who called her to come to give her testimony and to minister at their conference. Says, and they made all the arrangements and all. And she says, after they finish making all the arrangements and they're giving to get off the phone, he starts having just a regular conversation. And then he says to her, I got to tell you this before I hang up. You're my favorite porn star.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So,
No,
of course, she
no,
didn't go. She didn't go to the,
absolutely
she
not.
didn't show up. But that's the kind of stuff she was having to deal with. Well,
Mhm.
but before, and this, now she's married at this time though, because what happened was the man worked at the post office, got her a job at the post office. They ended up getting married, and they moved to Atlanta. And uh, maybe a year or two after they moved to Atlanta, they came back for the appreciation for my nephew, and I was down there preaching. But he prophesied to her while she was there to get ready because the baby was on the way. And she looked at him and laughed. She did one of those Sarah moves. She laughed.
Mhm.
Well, she called back what, a month and a half later to tell him she was pregnant. The little boy's 5 years old now.
Oh.
Yeah. Uh, but all of this was taking place. So um, she got her life straightened out. She works she works for the post office. She's married. She has a child, and she now has a ministry. And her and her husband started a church. They're co-pastoring the church now. But what I'm bringing up though was that in all of that, God still used her mightily, and the reason her church is doing so well, she goes to places like the Magic House, which is Magic is a strip joint in Atlanta.
Hmm.
She goes to places like that and let God lead her to the ones to talk to, and she's told, and because of the fact she's already been through that, she's a leverage and been powerful enough. Just the fact that she's living right now, that God uses her to get them out of these conditions before they get as messed up as she was.
Hmm.
She goes out and she talks to women on the street. She goes to the strip clubs. You know, she does all. She doesn't go there to participate. She only goes in there to witness to them and leave.
Hmm.
And that's been her that's been her ministry since she got to Atlanta about 8 years ago. And she's really flourishing well just in the ministry because she's able to witness to them. And that's the way a testimony does.
Yep.
I believe that people who have been through it doesn't make sense for me to go and tell uh someone who's overdosed on drugs or what God can do. I haven't been that route. I can tell you some other stuff. I can tell but all of us who have been through have gone through and overcome so that we can help others in the same situation to overcome. You overcome by the word of your testimony and the blood of the Lamb.
Yep.
We don't testify anymore. We
No.
don't encourage people anymore. We do too much talking about people. I remember pastoring in North Carolina, and the church mother there, who was also the wife of the pastor, um, she was down on everybody. I mean, if a woman came in with a dress too short, she didn't put a napkin over her. She wouldn't. She kept these blankets, and it'd be hot sometime down there in North Carolina. She'd throw a whole blanket over. And if a woman came in pants, she'd have a fit, because back then, Kojic was strict about women in pants, and she was she would just talk about anybody who didn't look like her or dress like her. And I remember one, I think it was a Friday night, and I was preaching, and I talked to the pastor about some of the things that was happening in this, especially what his wife did. He said, Elder, you the assistant pastor. I done told you got authority just like me. I done told them. He said, I know you're gonna tell them right, so straighten it out. I told her that Friday night. I says, you cannot get people to change with your lips. You get people to change by the Bible say being an example. I say, I guarantee you, stop running these women off when they come to visit. God sending people in to visit our church. You run them off because you talking about how they dress and what they wear and blah, blah, blah. I say, learn to keep your lips shut. I say, I guarantee you, if they're here and they get accustomed to seeing how the other women are dressing, you ain't got to tell them. They're going to automatically conform. Well, that next week, a young lady comes in. She comes. She's wearing pants. And she was getting ready to go over there, and I looked at her. And she looked at me, and I gave her this look. She went back to her seat with that blanket she had. So a couple of weeks later, and this young lady started coming. She joined that Sunday. She came, started coming to Bible study. She was at Friday night service. And she started singing in the choir. 2 weeks later, she came in with a dress. She came in dressed just like they were dressing. Nobody ever told her that the women didn't wear pants here. She saw it. She felt out of place because she looked around. Nobody else was wearing it. She stopped. Within 6 months, we went from, because I had been there a couple months. And when I got there, there were 16 children and 6 adults. And then me and my wife and daughter. Now, when 6 months later, we had 78 adults and 43 children. And folks were keeping their mouth shut. I told them, all y'all need to do is come in and testify and live the life in front of these people. That's all you got to do. But everybody wanted to be, well, she did anyway. And we found out later about her, and I discovered why she was so hard on everybody. She was really trying to camouflage, and she didn't want nobody to find out about her past. Her husband had married her, and I think they had. Did they have one? Okay. He had a child already, and she had 2, I think. Then they adopted 2 kids. When he married her, she was in the church. She had been saved a little while. He married her, and she was trying to keep it from him, but the pastor had already told him she was a former prostitute. She was ashamed of her past, but she wanted to blast everybody else for their lifestyle. She finally, overcome it after years of being married to him. But, her whole thing was she was just down on everybody and, trying to forget about what she was. And her mother busted her one day because her mother was our church mother. Evangelist Knox. I never forget that old lady. She was real nice. But she set her straight one day and told her, you need to start having more compassion for people because God had compassion for you. You wouldn't have the husband you have if it wasn't for God, But we don't do that a lot to people because, yes, there are certain principles that apply that if you do certain things in the world, don't expect these kind of outcomes in the world. But once you come to God, he takes your sins, casts them into the sea, and remembers them no more. God is totally different in dealing with your past than people are. He'll wipe the slate clean. But you got to let him do it. And you can't walk around being all snobbish and being afraid to even tell your testimony. um, when we were taking our counseling classes, one of the things they told us about was acknowledgement. No one can ever overcome the struggles of their life if they never acknowledge that it's a struggle. That's the whole premise of the AA and the Synanon, Alcohol Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, all the drug rehab programs. The first thing that they do, you notice that in every AA meeting, they have to get up and make an acknowledgement. My name is so and so. I'm an alcoholic. Well, I think though after they delivered it and kicked it, they ought to change that. I'm no longer an alcoholic because, once you've been delivered, you aren't what you were.
Mm-hmm.
But the point I'm making is you can't get help to be free until you first acknowledge you in a bondage.
Mm-hmm.
The hardest thing for some people to do, and it's because of the shame factor. And here is another fact they taught us. Most people are their worst, what's the word I'm looking for? They're their worst,
Critic.
huh?
Critic.
Yeah, they're their worst critic. They are so ashamed of discovering what they really are that they will keep themselves from getting help and put themselves through more pain and struggle because they can't accept it. And admitting it is the hardest thing to do because once I admit it, I'm faced with the responsibility of being accountable and responsible for my recovery.
Yep.
But long as I'm in denial, there's this one uh, uh, gospel artist was being helped by this other famous uh, counselor who helps people, and they were asking them, about their problem, and they kept saying, "But I'm functioning." I'm not slurring my speech. I'm not incoherent. Yeah, I do this. I start about 11 in the morning, and I'm well into the night, still drinking, but I'm functioning. Well, you have some functioning alcoholics. I worked with a guy who was a functioning heroin addict. Um, we had a friend who was a functioning heroin addict, and he was an evangelist. He,
Oh.
yeah, and you talking about could preach? The man could preach, but he be high in here. He was a functioning heroin addict, a very famous preacher. He tells his testimony. I'm a friend of his, Bishop George Bloomer. He tells you right now one of the best sermons he ever preached. He was high on cocaine, but he was addicted. But it took God to deliver him. But he couldn't get delivered until he acknowledged to God and himself that he had a problem. Most people can't overcome their problems because they won't acknowledge. They're quick to say, "No, I ain't got no problem. No, I handle mine. No, I can deal with it. No, I ain't struggling. No, it ain't stopping me." But it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's limiting you, and you're being limited by the substance, and it becomes a substance abuse. And a lot of them don't realize it's abuse even when it's hurting them. They're still in denial because no one wants to acknowledge. And this is one of the problems I see in the church is this lack of accountability and responsibility. I guess it's 5:32. That's what I want to talk about this today anyway. But I got conversation with you, Devin. How you doing, Quit? But
I'm doing good, just listening to you.
okay, but I notice and I see this
Hello?
deniability.
Hello?
Yeah, we hear you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I see this deniability in the church, and the sad thing is we have a lot of leaders who are not leading according to God's plan, and it's hurting the church. It's not helping. We have people stumbling in the church because these individuals are taking advantage of their positions and taking advantages of their offices. And then they don't want to admit they're wrong. I got a book from a preacher a few years ago. Matter of fact, I'm returning it to him. But a young man wrote a book about a local pastor here. He didn't call his name. He used his initials. And most of us knew who it was. But what happened is that other leaders supported him, even would have him come to preach. And he could preach. But he was a vile individual. Some of the stuff he did, unspeakable. But yet they associated with him. And finally, after years of this going on, there was an article written about him. And within a couple of weeks, he packed up and left town, and his congregation didn't even know he was leaving. They come to church one day, and it's another congregation in there, a whole nother ethnicity, and he done sold the building and left town. But this is the kind of stuff that goes on and happens, and people don't speak up when leaders are doing wrong, and they support them. One of the things that you can't do in saying you care for someone or you love them, you can't support them in their wrongdoing and refuse to correct them. Too often, people just get to do whatever they want to do, and no one corrects them. No one tells them they're wrong. And sometimes it's because they're afraid of how it's going to be received or how somebody's going to react to it. I often say it and look at it this way. I had a lady get mad at me one time because I snatched a little girl out the middle of the street, and all she saw was me running across the street toward her porch with this little girl. And I'm telling the little girl, don't ever do that again. And she comes out the house and starts cursing me out. Well, there happened to be 3 elderly ladies sitting on the porch next door to her house, and they told her, baby, he just saved your child's life. And she didn't want to hear that. I don't care what he's doing. That so-and-so ain't had no business with his son. And he get your hands off my so-and-so daughter. And the little girl was crying. She was scared. And I was fussing at her. And when I put her down, I said, ma'am, if I see her doing it again, I'm going to care enough to stop her again. So you can be mad all you want. You can cuss me out all you want.
I'm about to save this baby's life.
Yeah, I said, I'm going to do the right thing. Well, the same thing when we're dealing with one another. Sometimes people think that it's wrong to say certain things to people, and they want to act as though you're trying to boss them or tell them what to do. Case in point, my mother never allowed my sisters to go out with curlers in their hair, with bonnets or a head wrapped up or house shoes on. No, they had to have their hair combed, their clothes had to be ironed, and they had to go out, looking decent. Well, nowadays you say something to a woman or tell her, "Oh, you can't wear that in public." Don't tell me what I can't do. I'm grown, and a man can't tell me what to wear, what not to wear. What and I've heard them asked in interviews. Well, what if your husband or your boyfriend said he don't want you going out wearing that? Well, that's too bad. Well, you don't understand. What they don't understand is he's saying that out of care and concern for you. Who wants who wants to see someone they care about go out and embarrass themselves? Although today they don't think that's embarrassing, but it is. Some of the stuff they do now, you go out, walk through a mall, and when 40% of the women got on flip-flops instead of shoes, and house shoes instead of shoes. I said they call them house shoes.
What's a house shoe?
Yeah. They call those house shoes. But because we care is the reason that we even say anything. And it's hard to get people to sometimes understand that because they think you're meddling or you're trying to get in their business. And that's not the case. It's not the case at all.
It's like, I got better things to do.
Yeah. So, and it's gotten so that, you don't even look anymore, like longer than maybe a glance, and just, you got to ignore it and keep going. Because, even sometimes they'll ask, what you looking at? But we got to come to a place where we start really helping people. And part of that is I can never be afraid of sharing my vulnerabilities or the experience of what God has done for me, because I'm afraid that somebody else will ridicule me if I admit to something about my past.
Mm-hmm.
When that's the greatest testimony and weapon you have, is to testify to what God has done for you so that somebody else can understand and relate to, oh, wow, well, if he did it for him, oh, he sure can help me.
Mm-hmm.
But we got a lot of people thinking I'm worthless, and people sit quiet, they scared to talk about it. And right now I'm helping at a church. They don't know how to testify. They have testimony service, but they don't know how to testify.
Mm-hmm.
They don't talk about, they talk about all that the devil done, what they've been through, what people been doing, how it made them feel, and blah, blah, blah. And they might, and when they get through, well, just pray for me, saints. And there's one, though, she will do all that, but she'll come back and say, but I thank God that he did so and so. Well, you should have just went to that in the first place. I thank God for,
Telling a whole life story.
oh man, yeah, and they did teach us how to testify, because
Uh-huh.
we had one pastor. He stopped you. He said, "Hold on, stop glorifying the devil. Tell us what God did for you. What did the Lord do?" Because if you get up talking about, "Whoa, it's been a rough day, and I got up and the devil," he stop right there. We don't hear about the devil. We here to talk about the Lord. What did the Lord do for you? But yeah, we have forgotten about God. And you know what? The other thing is, we really have to learn. One of the things I learned in counseling was you got to have the right approach to someone who's struggling. You got to have the right approach. Um, you may have done something I maybe think is totally horrible. But for me to come and scream at you, browbeat you, and try and embarrass you publicly, that's the wrong way to reach you about it. Our attitudes should be polite at all times, and we should know how to entreat one another, how to talk to you to get you to understand and see the error of your ways, and not to feel like you're worthless, but make you feel valuable enough that you want to present yourself better. You want to have a change in your life. You want to present better. But browbeating people, and then the other part is to stop letting people come in living raggedy and still be able to operate freely in the ministry. You couldn't do certain things in the church if you weren't living right. You couldn't get up in the pulpit and preach, and the pastor knew you was having sex with a few of the young ladies in the church. That wasn't happening. But now the musicians got 2 or 3 babies in the church. Well, let me skip over my list. Pastor got 4 or 5 babies in the church, and they ain't all from his wife. This kind of stuff goes on, and it goes on, and we keep allowing the devil to operate in our midst, and we won't say anything. Like we're scared. Most people even scared to talk about it. Wouldn't nobody dare say some of the stuff I say sometimes, because they like, yeah, you shouldn't say all that. Why not?
That's the reason why we in the mess we in now, because nobody's saying anything.
Anything.
See, the thing that frustrates me is, I think I've talked about this before, but you have a younger generation, my generation specifically, that see all that's gone on. They've been through it, especially if you've been in the church for a while. You kind of get used to, but you can't stand the fakeness because you know that these people are, because they act like we can't see, like we don't have eyes, like we don't see how you act. And in Bible study last night, my mother asked a question about how do you know when somebody has ill intentions towards you, more of like on the sexual side, but it's how can you tell how they approach you and how they talk to you, and you can see that with men and women. I can't just knock on men. It's women too, especially old women of all ages. um but they talk to these younger people and other people that are married, and certain things that they say, and you're like, that's not appropriate. But if me myself were to say something, then they'd be like, oh, don't be disrespectful or whatever. And I'm not trying to say it in a disrespectful voice, but I'm just kind of like, who do you go to? Do I approach you right then? And they've kind of made it taboo to say that. And I know like I said, you got to be respectful with everybody, especially those that are older than you, but you just get frustrated. At least I do, having to see what goes on after church, even during church. So, and then they say, oh, do you just can't just say anything, or, don't talk about that. And I'm like, that's the reason why we're in the messes we're in now, because nobody will address it. Nobody's going in the back to actually do proper addressing. Go with your deacon and your pastor and whoever else, take the party in the back and talk about it. They won't even do that. What they doing in the back is stuff that shouldn't be done in the back.
That's right. No. Well, I know we had an incident, and we called the party into the office and told them in no uncertain terms, this will not be tolerated here.
Mm-hmm.
No, you don't do that. This is not the place for that. And I remember when we used to go to the state meetings and stuff like district meeting, I'd make sure that when we were done, my daughters are coming to the car with me. We get ready to leave. We're not hanging around. You know, y'all can't go hang out with, and no, especially when you see grown men trying to have an audience with teenage girls. That's
Mm-mm,
definitely a no-no.
mm-mm.
It's a no-no. There's no justification at all for you to be trying to have an audience with these young girls. No, period. And I remember having a couple of them approach me. I was the financial secretary for another jurisdiction just before Northwest, and there were these two young ladies would always be hanging out the finance office, and every time I see them, hi, Pastor Dakis, and finally one day I told them, I said, listen, y'all stop hanging around my office, stop following me around. I'm a married man. I'm not interested in either of you, and there ain't nothing you can do that my wife ain't already doing. I'm perfectly satisfied. Stop hanging outside my office. I just, I'd had enough of it. You can't.
You're calling out that spirit, huh?
Yeah, because see, the thing that happens is sometimes, and I saw this, I had a friend of mine, true story, very anointed, flourishing church, had a great ministry, wife and a bunch of kids, bunch of children. This one young lady kept coming after him, and he kept ignoring, what she was doing. One day she caught him
Uh-oh, Joseph style.
in his office, and the next thing you know, he's in a full-blown affair with this woman.
Oh no.
Ruined his church. Yeah. End up having to move out of state, blah, blah, blah. It took him almost 10 years to recover from that. But he learned the lesson. If he could just listen, though, I said, man, ain't no woman coming in my office by herself. When they used to come in to talk to me, and they go to close the door, I said, leave that door open.
Leave it open.
Don't close that door. Leave that door open. What do you want?
Well, you gotta be like that.
Leave the door open. What do
You,
you want?
you gotta be like that. I was just listening to last week, the author Jerry Jenkins, I'm sure you know of him. But I didn't realize he had a book out about marriages, and he said that when he travels around, because he's well known or whatever, he says that he adopted the Billy Graham way of traveling around. He says he never travels without somebody, or if he is alone and say he goes to an airport and there's a woman going to pick him up, he said, well, could you get a guy, or if not, at least two women, so that it's not just me and the one woman in the car. So he adopted that because we all know what happened with Jimmy Swaggart.
Yep.
and you don't want that. You had that big contrast between him, because they're both evangelists, Billy Graham and Jimmy Swaggart, you know, big time evangelists. But the difference between them was Billy Graham was adamant he's not traveling by himself. He's
No.
covering himself, his marriage, his family, his ministry by adopting that. And I was listening to Jerry talk about it, and he said, now some people would say, oh, well, this person's so nice and she wouldn't do that. And he said, I'm not just covering me and my family, but I'm also covering her, because somebody off the street is going to snap a picture and say, oh, and then, bring up everything. And he's like, no, it's not just me. I'm covering everything,
Everyone. Yep.
and you may call me a prude, because he said some people would be like, that's very, like you're a square and all these other names. Like, I'd rather be called all these names and have this long, old, drawn out situation where nothing actually happened, but because somebody lied on me, it just, everything goes downhill because the damage is done.
And a lie can start a scandal. Yep. But my mother used to go with me. I said, Mama, I'm going out of town. Linda can't get off work. I say, so I'm you going with me. And I take my mama with me. And I remember this one time, he's in North Carolina, and this woman was coming after me, and my mama spotted it. She said, he's married. and I'm his mama.
See, you gotta take somebody who don't mind speaking up, or at
Oh
least
yeah,
don't mind taking action.
and it's
Barbara Jean.
huh?
I said Barbara Jean.
Yep, Bob Jean didn't play, boy. But you know,
Oh,
and the thing is that you have to guard your reputation. Your
yeah,
reputation speaks of you,
Hmm.
and it all it takes. You can take years to build a reputation, and it only takes a moment to ruin it. So you
yeah.
have to always. I had a cousin one time. I was preaching out of town and out of state in North Carolina, and I preached that morning. Went to hear another cousin preach that afternoon, and then they wanted to go to this church about 23 miles away in another city. So I decided I won't ride with them. And we get there, and uh, good service. So we leave service, and I said, I'm hungry, y'all. Let's go grab a bite to eat before we go back. So we go to this, uh, it wasn't a Waffle House. What was it called? They done closed down. Now I think it was the Shoney's. But anyway, we go there, and they had invited this other woman to come from that church who was from New York. And so the two cousins gonna sit on one side of the table and told her, sit over there next to cousin. I said, one of y'all get your little behinds up and come over here and sit next to me. Don't you dare. Y'all know I'm married. Don't sit no single woman next to me. I said, no. One of y'all get up and come sit over here, or I'm gonna go sit in the car and we can go home. I blasted them right there in public. And then on the way home, and I told them, don't y'all ever do that again. Well, I never went out with them after that anyway. But that's, you know, you have to guard yourself, because I had too many friends I know who got these reputations. One, he was a powerful preacher and evangelist here in the Bay Area. He had the worst reputation, and he ended up having a couple of babies out of state. You know, when he was trying, I didn't want that on me.
Mm-mm.
That's crazy. You know, but integrity. We got to have integrity,
Yep.
and we got to maintain a certain amount of self-respect. That's the other part about it, because you don't even respect yourself if you just do anything, because that means you don't even regard your own reputation. I think we all should regard our reputation, respect ourselves, and not let anyone put us in a situation that jeopardizes a good name. The Bible says a good name is rather to be had than riches. And
Yep.
that's true. Because a good name, you can get money with a good name.
It's like credit.
Yeah, right. And you can have people not even want to fool with you because you got money, because your name is no good.
Hmm.
So it's, you know, you gotta be what's the word I'm looking for? You gotta be committed to what's more valuable in your life, and what really counts, and what adds value to you rather than take away value. I think we all have an obligation to be responsible when it comes to carrying ourselves as ministers of the gospel, and never let anybody jeopardize that name or that reputation, and be able to stand up proud when you stand before people, and not be squirming when certain people walk in the door, because I hope they don't, oh no, I didn't know they was gonna be here tonight. I know some people that's been through that. I don't have time for that. I like preaching too much. I do. I like having a good reputation. Woo. But anyway, all right. Anybody have any final remarks?
Mhm.
I got to get out of here and go teach Bible study at the church too tonight. All
What are
right.
you?
Huh?
I said, what are you in your shed?
No, I'm actually in my breakfast room.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
And
door looks like a shed door for a minute. I couldn't tell.
oh yeah, no, that's a file cabinet. And then
Okay.
behind it is the old ironing board cupboard. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, this house has an old ironing board cupboard. You open that up and
Wow.
the board comes out. Yeah.
That's
Well,
neat.
thank you all for joining us today, and I appreciate you all coming on. Um, yeah, it's been a good conversation. I hope everybody enjoyed it and got something out of it. We will be back tomorrow for the round table, and we're gonna keep doing what we do and hoping that God enlighten and blesses us for all that we do for the benefit of the kingdom. So, as always, God loves you and I love you. Ain't a thing you can do about it. You go and be blessed in the name of the Lord Jesus. You all have a wonderful, wonderful